Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, it's good. I'm sure it's good. And welcome to the Austin Show here on Spreaker.com. Listen, when we got into this whole thing, and I started doing these shows, we got in because it was about energy. We were upset that Nancy Pelosi went on her book tour instead of dealing with the American Energy Act, which is exactly what they said they wanted. They wanted wind and solar and hamster power, and I read it and it was all in there. I think there was a thing that they were giving pet stores money to develop hamster power. And she said, no, I think I'm going to turn the lights off and go on a book tour. And it always bothered me because at the heart of any economy is energy. It's the fuel that fuels the economy. Everything moves that way. The prices of everything, down from toothpicks to a loaf of bread, is based on energy prices. And I don't understand why this administration in particular has decided to take the policy that they have. And we have a gentleman sitting across from me now. His name is Brigham McGown from United Transportation Advisors, who understands all this a lot better than I do. That makes you an expert. Congratulations. Okay. All you have to do is know a little bit more than somebody else makes you an expert. And
I'm happy to talk with you today.
Because most of the things we talk about energy, when people talk about energy, it's about gas prices.
Right.
But is that just sort of the tip of the iceberg? That really isn't what the real impact of an energy policy is. Can we get the gas prices down?
Right. No, I mean, gas prices are certainly part of it, but the price at the pump is only in part due to the actual cost of manufacturing it. So a lot goes into it. I mean, we really have a global energy market now, and where the price of fuel is determined by all sorts of different factors. And we also have an energy policy that needs to be coherent. And frankly, the last 4 years, we've suffered a little bit from an incoherent energy policy, and that's affected all of our pocketbooks.
When you say incoherent, because you can be nice. I don't have to be nice.
Well, I work in D.C., so,
I see.
We have to be nice.
Yeah, I work in Tampa. We don't care. Here's the deal, though. It seems like there's not been an energy policy.
Yeah.
You know what? I mean, other than pushing the buzzwords of alternative energy sources like the ones I mentioned, wind and solar and others, that's not really a policy, though, is it?
Well, if you talk to some of my friends, they'll say they have a very definite policy, and the policy is against fossil fuels. The policy is against any type of traditional fuel source. And the truth is, what are renewables? What is green technology? And if you ask your friends that are maybe pro-green, they'll have a difficult time coming up with exactly what it is. And, the truth is, we need an energy policy that has room for everybody. And that's coal, that's natural gas, that's crude. Solar is great, wind power is great, but it's not going to power our economy, and it's sure not going to power your car outside.
It's not going to power the ships that bring things across the sea.
Right.
And you're right. My car, although it's I drive a '99 Lincoln Town Car.
There you go.
Yeah, it's never going to get within the guidelines ever, and it's definitely not going to run from wind power. If the wind is blowing hard enough to move my car, things are bad. Things are very, very bad. What about energy policy don't most people get? I know that you said you worked into previous administrations. Because people, again, energy policy is a buzzword.
Right.
But I don't think anybody really knows what it means.
Well, it covers a lot. Wow, that's a big question. For example, let me just say this. It covers tax policy. People would be surprised to learn that, it's easy to beat up on big oil, right?
Mm-hmm.
Big companies make lots of money, but if you take ExxonMobil, for example. Did you know that for every dollar in profit that they make, they spend $3 more in taxes?
Why? That seems crazy. Why would you do?
Yeah.
That seems like a failing proposition. Why would you do that?
Yeah, and the only reason it works for them is economy of scale. They're large, like a Walmart. It's huge. But no, their average rate of return isn't that great. I mean, it's far less than most other businesses. Apple makes a much better rate of return on selling you the latest iPhone or an iPad than ExxonMobil does on a gallon of gas. And no, the taxes are huge. Federal taxes, state taxes, if you're looking at the price at the pump, all sorts of other taxes. So tax policy is a big piece. Environmental policy is a big piece. We're burning a lot of ethanol right now, as you probably know, in cars. And, truthfully, you get lower miles per gallon with ethanol. And and that's because it is not as an efficient a fuel source. But, farmers love ethanol.
Well, because it puts money in their pocket and it's subsidized, so government goes, oh, yeah, we'll buy your corn. And always seems kind of silly to take your food and burn it. That seems kind of silly to me, but I'm just a simple guy in the public school. What do I know?
And hey, there are places, it's just kind of cliche, but it's true. There are places in the world where people are starving. If you listen to the Europeans who, I don't know if we want to listen to them on much of anything right now, but they'll even say, why are you burning food in your car? That makes no sense, even to them.
Wow. If that doesn't make any sense to the French, I mean, come on. And they'll do anything. Speaking of French, in this energy policy, what seems to be missing is, we're talking about renewable fuel. Yeah. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say the N-word, and I'm going to say nuclear.
Nuclear. Like W did.
I would say it just like he said. And I'm saying that he is indeed the guest speaker.
Yeah, the U.S. currently about 18% of our power is produced by nuclear power. The technology, our reactors are old. They're 60s and 70s, and everybody knows about 3 Mile Island, but overall, the industry has a most excellent safety record, and the fact is, if you went out and built a new reactor based on current technology, it is probably by an exponential factor safer than the ones that are currently operating. They're relatively inexpensive to build. They are great sources for electricity, and they don't pollute. And had Bush stayed in office, or had we had a Republican in the office, I think the Yucca Mountain depository would have been open, and we would have been pro-nuclear. And we saw what happened in Fukushima, and I don't want to make light of that, but it took something like that level of tsunami, right, to put them in that situation, and some things and some human error went along with all that. So if you're in a place like here in Florida, where we're probably not going to get tsunamis, and the regular hurricane isn't going to damage a plant like that. That just seems to make sense, doesn't it? Nuclear power does make sense for a lot of reasons. And like I was starting out earlier, look, we need a true all-the-above energy approach where there's room for everybody. I mean, you don't pull out your toolbox and use a Phillips head when you need a hammer, and you don't use a hammer when you need, something else, a saw or a hacksaw. So there's room at the table for everybody, and we need everybody in it. We have enough coal, and I know that's a dirty word by some, for the next 200 years, but there are emerging technologies where we can capture those emissions, called carbon capture. It's getting better every year. There are ways that we can do things and still be good environmental stewards. And I'm originally from the Midwest in Cincinnati, but if you go back to the early days of steel in Pittsburgh, in the middle of the day, you couldn't see the sun. So to say that we haven't cleaned up our act, we really have. We have some of the cleanest air we have ever had in this country. And, it doesn't need to be a zero-sum game. We can have power, too, and still have clean air.
You mentioned at the beginning of the table, and I mentioned a little earlier how I got involved. Actually, how I got involved in all this whole conservative talk radio thing had to do with the American Energy Act. And I'm sure you remember the American Energy Act. Are you talking about a plan a lot like the American Energy Act?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need an energy plan that doesn't handicap some industries and artificially prop up others. And I had a huge debate with a liberal talk show host yesterday who said the government should absolutely be picking winners and losers in the energy industry. And I said, you're crazy. That's not, you want that, move to Europe. That's not how stuff works over here.
Wow.
And so, you have to let market forces determine. Look, there's probably some kid in some garage right now that'll come out with the next version of solar panels that will take us from being 18% efficient to 50%. Maybe that's a game changer when that happens. But when that happens, it happens. And so, until then, we've got to be realistic, because you can't power your car on hope and change. You can't turn your electric on hope and change. And I can't attach a windmill to my car. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. You're absolutely right. And you mentioned that. You mentioned fracking earlier. And now if we start picking winners and losers, isn't that a balance? Because now, with that technology, the fracking technology, is pretty much guaranteeing that some of these other technologies are even longer away from being fiscally viable. Because that, especially due to natural gas being fairly inexpensive, being plentiful. With the Saudi Arabia of this stuff, we got a bunch of it. We got Taco Bell everywhere, so there's gas everywhere. But I'm saying, but that makes those other technologies, the emerging technologies, if you will, a little further away from being fiscally viable. Right. And with this administration, isn't that kind of the problem? Isn't that kind of the deal? They're trying to balance these things out.
Well, yeah, that's part of the issue. When you look at Solyndra and some of the other pieces, frankly, some of these darling industries of the moment on renewables, they were aligned with the Obama administration. And I'm not here to tell you really that there's cronyism going on in Washington. I'm just saying.
Wait.
So
I've got the biggest news story in this place.
but I'm saying, if the facts won out, we would be in a little different, when do the facts make sense in Washington? But you're right. If you look at natural gas, if you were comparing us to Saudi Arabia, right? If you compared their oil reserves to our natural gas reserves, we have three times the amount of stuff that Saudi Arabia has. We could power this country for the next 200 years on natural gas. And, fracking is not, hydraulic fracturing, or fracking as the opponents like to call it. This isn't new. I've been doing this for 60 years.
I do that, and I went to public school.
And, you talk to people and they're like, oh my gosh, we're going to contaminate the environment. We're going to ruin it. Or, what if this stuff spills? It has salt in it. It may go in the roadways. Now, I don't know if you ever lived up north, but what do they put on the road in the winter?
I think it's salt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's ludicrous. And, right now, and here's a great example, too, where opponents say more drilling doesn't mean cheaper prices. Here's a great example. Natural gas, we increased production by 11 to 15%, and gas price. You know how far natural gas prices fell?
How far?
Percent.
How many?
50%.
Half.
Now,
again, that's public school. Half.
Other people say, "Well, it was a warm winter." Well, that's true. All right, so take 10% off of that. But my point is, a little added production can have a huge offset, and everybody knows that, right? So it can make a big difference. It really can.
The more you have of it, the cheaper it is. Yeah. What an interesting
supply and demand. I don't know if they teach that anymore either, but
not in public school.
Yeah. But no, so a coherent energy policy can make a huge difference, and we need to start, and we need to wake up, and we need to stop picking winners and losers in the energy market and let consumers decide. You decide if you want a $5. If you want biodiesel, you'll go buy biodiesel.
I will. But I won't.
Don't?
Because it doesn't run into hoopty. It just doesn't run into hoopty. But I think you're absolutely right. Now, this show is about action, and I've had to get my listeners to be active about things.
Right.
It's nice to know, that's cool to know, and everything. But if you don't do anything with it, it doesn't do anybody any good.
Right.
The average person who's listening to my show is somewhat involved, because if they're going to go to the internet to listen to this kind of stuff, they're somewhat involved. They're someone who's concerned. What can they do to move the federal government and even their state government sometimes, because the state governments get involved as well, to a more coherent, a more common sense, a more effective energy policy?
Well, and that's just it. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? You've heard that before, and there is a silent majority. It's us, the common sense people that are taking a balanced approach. We've got to speak up. we sit around and go, oh, okay, yeah, those people are crazy, but it's a very vocal minority, and it's time for the majority to speak up. So, number one, we do that by voting in November. Okay. Must get to the polls and vote. I don't care if it's raining, it's snowing, sleeting, hailing, meteor shower. Get to the polls.
Locust,
plague.
I think they're good on honey anyway, and they're all protein and no fat. So,
so that's the first thing, and the second thing is you can be active, and you can. The left doesn't need to have a corner on activism. We can be activists on the right as well.
That's correct. Well, you know what? I appreciate that, and we're going to stay in touch because this is something that I want to know, that I personally want to know more about, because I believe that it's at the core of so many issues, so many things. And you mentioned environmental policies, tax policies, the cost of everything that's in your house was brought at some place by a train that operates on diesel or by a truck that operates on diesel. Everything in your house, nothing was, even if it was airlifted, the fuel was used and was not brought there by windmill and was not brought there by solar. So there's all sorts of ways that this affects everybody, even though you don't think it does, but it certainly does. And thank you so much, Mr. McGown, for coming in today. Absolutely. All the way from D.C. We appreciate you. Have a fantastic rest of the convention. Do your worst, my friend. Let people know. We appreciate you.
We'll do it, and please be in touch. Happy to talk. On or off.
All right.
Doesn't matter.
Sounds good, man. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, listen, we're going to... that's Brigham McGown. He's a managing principal. Thank you so much from the United Transportation Advisors. We'll have more interviews up on Spreaker.com as the day progresses, so stay tuned. Don't go away. Keep paying attention. We're still here at Radio Row here in Tampa, Florida, at the Republican National Committee Convention. This is our last day here. We'll be packing up. God, it's going to be a sad second when we pack up, but we'll be packing up in a little bit. Thank you for coming to the Will Austin Show here on Spreaker.com and Blog Talk Radio.